We're moving into an era where the disruptors have new tools to work with, the ones that can take things apart. The disruptors are going after wherever the big money streams are, whoever has the biggest revenue coming in. They're figuring out ways to disrupt these revenue streams, and sometimes they're rather destructive in how they do that. Sometimes they're looking to capture that wealth for themselves, for their own business. This is happening in real time. One of the things that the internet has done is it's created this global awareness, and it heightens our ability to understand what's going on all over the world. And it's giving us a clearer picture of all the things happening in real time. Every industry is a bell curve. Every industry that we have in existence today will eventually go away. It'll eventually die and get replaced with something else. I was reading some estimates on this concept of peak steel, and the estimates are that we're going to reach the peak of the steel industry somewhere around 2024. And then we'll come up with other composite materials that will kind of replace steel. So we have a bell curve for the steel industry, and we reach a peak where the demand for that product reaches that certain peak. But before we reach that, somewhere before that, we reach the peak employment for that industry. We reach a peak employment, and then there's this constant pressure to do more with less. And those people then get displaced. They get put out of their positions then. The peak employment for the steel industry was probably somewhere around 1980, somewhere around there. And so each of these industries that we have around us today, where are they in this bell curve? Are they still on the beginning side, or are they on the end side? A lot of the traditional industries are on the declining side. There's this constant pressure to do more with less, and that's where we're
and that's such a great point, because I think there are a number of, Australia is experiencing that significantly in a number of industries. At what point, though, do you give up? At what point do you start a transition? At what point do you start looking for other opportunities? And how difficult that is when you are dealing with people's lives.
I'll just provide a perspective on this. This is one of the paradoxes of innovation. The time that you start is when you feel like you don't need to start, because by the time it's clear, it's too late. By the time the writing is on the wall, everybody can read it. So a good organization that's thinking about how it continually reinvents itself, it is always thinking about what is it going to start doing, what is it going to do better, and what is it going to stop doing? What are the beautiful ships it's going to destroy, which I agree is a really tough thing for an organization to do. So if you have this mindset, Andy Grove from Intel wrote a book, Only the Paranoid Survive, that your organization is finite, that your brands are finite, that your business model is finite, you're always thinking about what's going to come next. You're always thinking about what is yesterday's as opposed to tomorrow's business. The one other thing that I just think is worth putting out there, this notion that we have to continue to drive to do more with less, that having fewer employees is better than more employees. It's based on the paradigm that the point of a corporation is to maximize shareholder value. And it's just interesting to see that there are increasingly thought leaders, Michael Porter, Roger Martin, Rosabeth Moss Cantor, et cetera, who say that this is a failed paradigm, and one of the reasons why we've had such crises in the business world over the past few years. No one has yet provided a better alternative, but I think this is one of the things that we all need to think about collectively in the years that come. Can we get beyond maximizing shareholder value to something else that has more positive effects on the world?
I wonder if I could ask you a question about this, Geoff, because we're talking here not merely about questions that organizations face, companies face about how to adapt. I think we're talking about questions which are political in every normal sense of the word, about how as a society are we going to deal with these changes and challenges. So it's easy to talk about collective problem solving and problem solving across sectors, but you have a lot of experience about this from from the political end of it? What's the politics of trying to deal with complex social problems?
Well, maybe I could unwisely offer a very simple prediction relating to the bell curves, perhaps. And this is a highly political one in a sense. There will be many industries which continue to dramatically increase productivity and to dramatically shrink their workforce. Like the Intels, and some of them, like Intel, may be destroyed by ARM, which now, is probably better placed strategically, making all the chips in your mobile phones. And they will be great value creators, but not much employment. I wonder how many people could guess what the forecasts are in the USA of the share of GDP which will be taken by healthcare by the latter part of this century. What would you guess it was? That the standard forecast is about 50%. It's currently about 17%. And there are actually very strong reasons for expecting healthcare, even if it doesn't get to 50% of the economy, to get much, much bigger, partly because that's what richer people spend their money on, but above all it's because you can't actually do much for productivity in large areas of healthcare, care for the elderly, and so on, despite many efforts. So we're almost certainly going to see massive job creation in those fields, and indeed in the US in the last 20 years, half of all net job creation has been in health and care. And some of that will probably be done in for-profit corporations, but in fact they don't do very well usually in healthcare, even in the USA. So probably we will see different kinds of organization, mutuals, non-profits, public sector ones, doing a lot of that job creation, and they will have completely different business models to the Intels and ARMs and the car manufacturers. And almost any generalizations we make about the economy tend to get this wrong, because we have some fields which are on this, say, dramatic technology-driven productivity drive, others going almost the opposite direction. And I say, if you're wanting to bet where jobs will be created, and also as well, the most money will be created, it's going to be in quite labor-intensive care service industries like health, but also education, environmental services, and many others. Now, all of those are political, as well as being businesses, and in a way, the economic strategies of those industries in every country will be shaped by highly political debates about who gets what. And just one final comment, the Paralympics you all saw a few months ago, we are entering a period where prosthetics of all kinds, whether it's limbs or brain implants and so on, will be on offer, and every society will have to decide, are they only there to be bought by the very rich, or are they distributed in a more egalitarian way? And that's a fundamental values choice, but it will have very big economic consequences.
I want to put a question to all of you again on that very political point that Adam has put to you, and that is, around the world we see incredibly divisive political debates going on. We do not see very much bipartisan collaboration. So when we are facing such critical questions, we saw how difficult it was for Obama to get health care reform. In Australia, we have very difficult political debate. How do we harness our political leaders who seem to only be intent with power rather than reform and change?
Well, let's just compare two very different countries. The USA, as you say, has an incredibly brilliant country, full of creative people, the best universities in the world, a brilliant president, and yet a totally dysfunctional political system, a totally dysfunctional media, and therefore it dumbs down. The way that country works dumbs down the underlying capacities. At the opposite extreme, you have a country like Denmark, much smaller. They've closed half their hospitals in the last 20 years, in radically reforming their whole health system to be 21st century and ready for long-term conditions, much more self-management, much more use of technology, and so on, with almost no controversy at all, because they had a political system which could have conversations, look at futures, look at options, and think through what had to be given up as well as what needed to be done. It may just be these things are very hard for big countries, and I think China in a different way is stuck in sort of almost a mirror of the USA's stuckness, perhaps because of size. And my one sort of other prediction would be that the smaller entities will find it easier to navigate their way through to the right solutions than the big places. And Australia's kind of halfway between being big and small.